Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. In today's video, I'll be using some products from Elizabeth Craft Studios. I first saw their mouse die series at a scrapbook expo last year and fell in love. I bought several of the sets, but there are quite a few more add-ons that go with the little mouse and the big mouse sets. In the video today, I'm using the little mouse. I'll also be using the boot. I love this boot. It's super cute. I know it's only spring, but I'll also be using the fall accessories add-on set. A few other products I'm using that are not from Elizabeth Craft Designs. These are from scrapbook.com. I have the Cottage set, and I'm using just the acorn from this set. And for a sentiment, I'm using the flower card. There are 2 sentiments on this set, and I'll be using hello. It has the word and also the shadow. I've already die cut out all the pieces, and I have them stored in the small craft stack tray from Spellbinders. I love that there's a lid, so I won't lose all those itty bitty pieces. I will be doing quite a bit of ink blending, adding that extra detail to the die cuts. And I'm inking everything on a magnetic glass mat from GLASSBOARD Studio. I'm using the blush pink color, but they have a wide variety of different colors and designs to select. And if you want to check out GLASSBOARD Studio, I do have a discount code. You can save 15% using my code Kristie. And I will have links for all the products in the description box below. I'll start off by inking the edges of the boot. There's one piece of the boot that's the very background, and I used a lighter shade blue cardstock. For the main boot, I use a darker blue cardstock, and also for the tongue of the boot. And the ink color I use is Cove Blue from Catherine Pooler. I'm using a MagInk Tray from GLASSBOARD Studio, and it holds the ink pad in place. Now I'll move on to another set of die cuts. First, I need to clean up my mat, and I'll simply spray it with water and wipe it clean and dry with a Crafty cleanup cloth from scrapbook.com. In another craft stack tray, I have the pieces for the mouse. I'm pulling out all the brown fur pieces. And I'll set aside the craft stack tray, get to the rest of those die cut pieces later. The ink color I'll be using for the mouse is Distress Oxide Vintage Photo. I'll still use the MagInk Tray to hold the ink pad, but it's a square size, so it doesn't exactly fit inside the tray. My little fix is to add one of the MiniPawn Magnets. And the ink pad doesn't actually sit in the tray, it just sort of sits on the top, that little groove area. My fix works, but I'm hoping that GLASSBOARD Studio will release a square size MagInk Tray specifically for the Distress Oxide ink pads. Another option to help hold ink pads in place is to use a silicone mat on the glass mat. When inking up the mouse die cut pieces, I did put ink at the very top, the little hair on top of the mouse's head. That's not necessary for the piece with the ears, since it'll be covered up with just that individual head piece. On the little muzzle area of the mouse, I put the ink around all the outside edges, going a little bit darker in the cheek area. On the tail, I added more ink at the very tip. And then for the arms, I put a little bit around the hands or paws of the mouse. So I'll set those pieces aside, clean up my glass mat again. There's a teeny tiny die cut piece for the mouse's tongue, or it could be just the inside of the mouth. I cut it out from light pink cardstock, but later decided I wanted it a little redder, and yes, I could just cut out another one, but I decided to pull out an ink pad and just add that little bit of ink over that tiny die cut piece. The ink color is Distress Oxide Candied Apple. I will be inking more die cut pieces later, but first I want to assemble the boot and the mouse. So I'll clean up my craft mat, remove the MagInk Tray. You can glue directly on the glass mat. Adhesives clean very easily off of the surface. I like to use a silicone mat mostly because where I'm sitting, my lights are reflecting right where these die cut pieces are. I know you can't see it since I try to keep my lights at an angle and spare you from that reflection, but I want to still be able to assemble everything, so it helps to have that little silicone piece covering up the reflection for me. I'll start by assembling part of the boot. I'm doing the front right now. The laces is one die cut piece, but you do need to thread it through the top holes of the boot. And you'll do it from the back side. Once those are in place, I'll add glue on the right and left side of the rest of the laces so they're adhered down, and it'll look like they're actually going through the holes. I'll also add a little bit of glue at the very bottom of the laces so those pieces aren't sticking up. I'll place an acrylic block on top and let it sit for a moment while the glue dries. Next, I'll adhere the tongue behind that front piece of the boot. So I'll put glue on the back side of the front and add the tongue in place. You want it just a little bit lower than the top edge of the boot. The boot image is so cute, and I love that you can use it throughout the year. There's an individual die piece for the sole of the boot, and I used a very dark brown cardstock. I'll put glue on the back and adhere it at the very bottom. The right lace will overlap the sole. I didn't have it glued down completely, so I was able to sneak that sole piece on. Now I'll add a little extra glue behind the end of the lace piece. Now we're not going to add the back of the boot yet because the mouse needs to be adhered first. So now we'll assemble the mouse. For the mouse's eyes, I'll be inlaying them. I'll put a piece of clear double-sided adhesive tape on the back. And for the main piece of the eyes, I use black cardstock. It already has the little highlight hole area cut out. And for those highlight areas, I use white cardstock. They're teensy tiny pieces, so I am picking them up using the wax tip end of Scrapbook.com's Craft Pro Pick tool. I'll do the same thing for the mouse's tongue. Put a small piece of tape on the back and then inlay that teeny little piece. But first I'll attach the muzzle cheek area on the mouse's head. I'll remove the release paper from the tape, put glue behind the rest of the die cut piece and adhere it in place. And I'm lining it up with the chin of the mouse. And now I'll pick up the tiny tongue piece and inlay it in place. For the mouse's nose, I use a light pink cardstock, the same shade I'm using for the inside of the mouse's ears. I'll put glue on the back, adhere the nose down, and before that glue dries completely, I'll make sure it's on there nice and straight. Now I'll add the inside of the ears. And the background piece does have a little embossed area to show exactly where to add those die cut pieces. I love all the little extra details on the mouse images. There is the option of having the mouse's head facing to the side or facing front. The little mouse set also includes girl clothes, boy clothes, and a pretty flower if you want the mouse to hold it. Now I'll put glue on the back of the mouse's face and adhere it on the piece with the ears. I didn't ink any of the mouse's body since most of it will be covered up. For the tummy of the mouse, I used a very pale pink cardstock. Once I've adhered that down, I'll add just a tiny bit of glue at that top pointed area and then attach the head. Had a little bit of glue oozing out, so I did wipe that away. While I wait for the glue to dry, I'll secure those two pieces together with more tape. There are leg feet options for the mouse, but since the mouse will be inside the boot, they won't be visible, so there was no point of cutting those out. To attach the mouse, I'll put clear double-sided adhesive tape on the back of the boot, remove the release paper, and then I can figure out how I want the mouse to be positioned. I almost forgot to attach the poor little mouse's tail. I'll use more clear tape, and I'll add the tail on the right side of the mouse. I want the tail high enough so you'll still see it peeking out of the boot. Now I'll hold the mouse up to the front of the boot. I was trying to tilt the mouse's head just a tiny bit, but it's already glued down. And once I'm happy with the position, I'll press it down. So now I'll adhere the front portion of the boot with the mouse in it to the back of the boot. I'll put glue on the back, putting it around that outside edge and quite a bit in the center. Want to make sure it adheres down nicely. And before that glue dries completely, I'll make sure the back is lined up with the front. Next, I'll be attaching the arms, and I want it to look like the mouse is holding the edge of the tongue of the boot. I'll put glue on the back, add the first arm in place. So you can see the little fingers of the mouse is holding the top edge of the tongue. Now I'll put glue on the back of the other arm and adhere it in place. Part of the arm does end up being covered up by the very top edge of the boot. So there's the little mouse image sitting in a boot, all assembled. Super cute. I will be popping it up with foam dimension. I'll remove the release paper from the tape. And the foam I'm using is a 1mm thickness. I'll make sure to get good coverage, cutting a few of those squares in half. I'll add just a few more pieces. Put one on the side, one between the mouse's head and the boot, and then one in the center. I'll set that aside for now and assemble the background of the card. The pattern paper I'm using is from a retired collection by Crafter's Companion. It's their all occasion patterns and sentiments, and it's a 12 by 12 paper pack. This was a freebie I received in a scrapbook.com order. They have the best freebies every week, so make sure you're always checking those out. And I do have a link to scrapbook.com's current deals in the description box below. I used a light pink white stripe paper for the background, and at the very bottom I added a 1-inch strip of a wood grain pattern paper. The background piece is 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. I layered it on dark brown cardstock, and that piece is 4 1/8 of an inch by 5 3/8 of an inch. When adding the card front onto the card base, I left the 1/8 inch of the white card base border showing. After removing the release paper from the foam, I'll add the mouse in the boot on the front of the card. And you can see it is a fairly large image, really taking over an A2 size card. For a little extra detail on the inside of the card, I am adding a narrow strip of the pink and white stripe pattern paper. For a sentiment, I'm adding hello. I cut out the sentiment from the same dark brown cardstock I used for the sole of the boot and white cardstock for the shadow. I'll glue those two pieces together. Now there's not a lot of space on the card for a sentiment. I could put it over the boot, but I decided to tuck it in on the left side next to the mouse. I'll show you a few other examples where I tilted the mouse's head and I was able to put the sentiment in the upper left-hand corner. So there's the main card, and I'll be adding some lovely fall leaves. And yes, I know it's springtime, but when I envisioned this card, it was a fall card. I'll be inking the edges of all the leaves and the acorns, and I'm using Distress Oxide Vintage Photo. I'll use the same ink color for all the different die cut pieces. The 3 different leaf designs are from the fall accessory set from Elizabeth Craft Designs, and the acorn is from scrapbook.com's Cottage die set. The fall accessory set does include an acorn. It actually has 2 different sizes, but I thought they were a little too large. I wanted the smaller size to go with the leaves. There are 2 pieces for the acorn. I use a light tan for the main part of the acorn, and then the stem area, I use a darker brown cardstock. So once I have those all inked, I'll clean up my glass mat. I do need to assemble the 2 acorns, and since it's just the 2 pieces, they're very easy to assemble. So now I'll add some of the leaves on the left side tucked behind the boot, and the other leaves will go in front on the right side. I'll start with one of the reddish orange leaves, put glue on the back, tuck it in behind the boot on the left side. And in front of it, off to the side, I'll add one of the orange leaves. I am trimming off the stem. I want to make sure that leaf will still stay on the edges of the card. And since you won't see that area, it doesn't matter. Now I'll add one of the acorns on top of those 2 leaves. Now I'll work on this little leaf cluster in the lower right-hand corner, starting with the larger orange leaf. Now part of it will go off the edge of the boot, and in those areas, I'm adding some foam squares. I'll add 1 foam square, hold the leaf up to the card, feel around to see where I need to add any more foam squares. Then I'll remove the release paper, put glue behind the rest of the leaf, and adhere it in place. Now I'll add the yellow leaf on the left side of that larger orange leaf. Put glue on the back, adhere it in place. And then the final reddish orange leaf will go in front of the other 2. But before I adhere it down, I'll add another foam square underneath. I know right now you can see that foam square, but it will be covered up by the time I add the rest of the die cut images. And the final die cut to add is the acorn. Before adhering it down, I'll tuck in another foam square. But I did first cut that foam square in half since I need just a tiny piece. Then I'll put glue on the back of the acorn and add it right in front of the 3 leaves. For a final finishing touch, I'm using a white gel pen and adding a few highlights on the mouse. I'll add little highlights on the inside of the ears, little bit on the top of the nose, and then add 3 little dots for the mouse's cheeks. So there is my finished card, and I love how this turned out. The mouse is absolutely adorable. And I couldn't stop with 1 card, so I ended up making 8. I did use a few different cardstock colors for the mice. Some have a little bit of a yellowish tone. A couple of them I use a darker brown cardstock, but I love how they all turned out. If you are interested in any of the products I used in this video, I do have links in the description box below. And I have purchased several of the add-on sets to go with the little mouse and the big mouse, so I'm hoping to make more videos using those products. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.